In the last 3 years, I have helped hundreds of women have better sex and relationships with their partner, and the biggest unlock for most of them is communication. Because communication is lubrication. So in this video, I'm going to share all of my best tools and frameworks for talking about sex with your partner. So let's dive in. First, let's define what good communication looks like. So effective communication is a skill, and a communication is only as good as how it's received. So if you're saying something, but the person is not understanding what you're saying, the responsibility of the communicator is to change the way that they're communicating to arrive at understanding. The best communications also involve collaboration, and true collaboration is not compromise. In a compromise, you walk away feeling like you didn't really get everything that you wanted and you had to lose something. But real collaboration is both parties coming together to creatively find a solution that is even better than either of the original ideas or desires. And this takes so much more work than compromise, but it's significantly more rewarding. So here's what a great communication looks like. Permission beforehand, self-regulation beforehand. Both parties have the opportunity to share, and both parties leave feeling understood and heard. So next, I'm going to share my favorite communication frameworks for achieving all of those things. So a lot of these frameworks are based on Dr. Marshall B. Rosenberg's nonviolent communication framework. And you can use this to communicate on everything from sex to emotional needs to chores and beyond. This process allows you to relate to your partner in a way that helps both of you feel heard and understood and makes room for collaboration. So here's the framework. Step 1, ask for permission. So as I mentioned before, conversations about sex and intimacy or emotional needs can be triggering, vulnerable, potentially challenging. So for the best outcomes, it's really important that you ask consent to share. So an example of what that looks like is, hey babe, I really want to talk about something with you that feels really vulnerable. Do you have space to do that now, or should we put a time in the schedule to talk later? So step number 2 is starting with the goal in mind. So share the vision for what you want to get out of the conversation with a long-term vision and positive outcome. So this helps your partner understand what the purpose of the conversation is, and it can recruit them into creating the positive outcome that you want to have. So an example of what that looks like is, hey babe, I would really love to feel understood in this conversation. I'd love for us to stay calm and relaxed as we talk so we can create a positive outcome. I want this conversation to lead us to more connection, to more intimacy and love in our relationship. Are you on board with that? So step 3 is to state the facts. When you're communicating, talk about what is real in the situation with as little added judgment or story as possible. So stating the facts of the situation instead of your interpretation that you're layering onto the situation. So an example of what that looks like is, I've noticed that the last 3 times when we had sex, you grabbed your phone right after we finished. That has no added story, it has no added meaning, it has no added emotion, it just is a fact of what happened. But step 4 is share the impact. So it's important to be vulnerable and honest about the impact those facts have on you and your relationship so you can get to a solution. So an example of what that looks like is when you grab your phone after sex, I feel disconnected from you. I create a story that you use me and that you don't care. And I've started to feel some feelings of resentment build in me. That is taking total ownership for your feelings instead of blaming that creates defensiveness. So step number 5 is to make a request. This is your opportunity to share desires and needs, to make requests, and then collaborate with your partner about what realistically works for both of you. So an example of what that looks like is, I would love to have 10 minutes after sex to lie side by side and cuddle. I would like for you to run your fingers through my hair and kiss me on the forehead. Then I would like to shower off together. What do you think about that? So I'm about to get into tips for talking specifically about sex, but if you are enjoying the video so far, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. So timing, tone, and turf is a phrase coined by Dr. Emily Morse. These 3 tips I have found are super supportive for talking about sex specifically. So tip number 1 is timing. Having conversations about sex at a time when both you and your partner are relaxed, regulated, and have the energetic and emotional space to really hear one another. And again, like I said before, ideally request consent for the conversation. Tip number 2 is tone. So you want to bring the energy that you want the conversation to have. It's calm, relaxed, grounded, and reflect it in your tone because 90% of communication is nonverbal. So nagging, criticism, accusatory, or blaming is not going to get you the outcome that you want. Tip number 3 is turf. So ideally, you're having conversations about sex outside of the bedroom in a place that's calming or soothing to you and your partner's nervous systems. But what about when you need something to be different during sex? As hard as it can feel to say something in the heat of the moment, it's also so important to let your partner know if they're doing something that doesn't feel that good for you. And there are a few ways that I like to do that. Either I'll ask to slow down, I'll ask to change the position or the act of what we're doing, or I'll take control and shift what's happening by moving my own body, or I'll use an agreed upon safe word to pause the action. The stoplight system of yellow equals slow down and red equals stop is one of the simplest safe word systems. You could also just use stop or slow down. But remember, your partner doesn't want to do things that don't feel good to you. So stop pretending like you're going to ruin the mood, because if you're enduring, the mood is already ruined. But what if you're receiving the communication? Listening is just as important as sharing. So here are a couple tips for listening. So number 1, stay open and keep your defenses down. If you feel your defenses coming up, just pause the conversation. If you start to get triggered, you can come back to it. I love asking the question, is there more? Over and over and over, is there more? Is there more? Until the conversation is really complete, because usually people just want an opportunity to be fully heard. Listen to understand, not to respond. But starting these conversations can be hard because it can feel like there's never a right time. So this is where having a regular weekly checkpoint in your relationship can be incredibly supportive. A weekly relationship check-in is an opportunity to connect, share what you love about each other, acknowledge and appreciate each other, and voice any needs or requests that you have. If you haven't implemented a check-in in your relationship, I highly, highly recommend that you set that up. If you want more guidelines on how to do that, I've included the exact questions that I use in my weekly check-in, along with so many resources for couples in the video, 3 common struggles that couples face. So check it out next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there.